Hello, my name is Bubs, I'm an artist, and I like to hear myself talk, and guys, 'tis the season. The season to complain, that is. It's been almost half a year since I last complained about a bunch of random, inconsequential nonsense, yet there is still so much random, inconsequential nonsense that bothers me. So, here we are. If you're a new viewer, you do not have to go watch my other videos of this nature in order to understand this one, so no worries, and if you are a returning viewer, yes, I changed my talk sprites again. I was gonna do another goofy thing to reveal them, like last time, but instead I'm just gonna stand here and give you a couple seconds to panic about it in the comments. Okay, now that we've got that all out of our systems, let's be honest here, this is the third time around for me, so I'm not gonna bother with that grand of an intro. Some of you may be grateful for that, but anyways, basic framing. I'm an artist, which means I like art. I like making it, and I especially love consuming it, but I don't love all art equally. There are some little tropes that crop up in the art that I consume that annoy me for whatever reason. Tropes are obviously not inherently bad, but if you already don't like something, it's obviously a bit irritating to keep on seeing it, and I would like to ramble to you about these things that I find irritating, because I think that's pretty fun. Gonna also keep my disclaimer short and sweet because over-explaining is wasted on people that don't care what your disclaimer is and will just get mad anyways. So, everything I say in this video is obviously just my personal opinion. I will be giving examples and reasoning for everything I'll be discussing, but this is not done with the intention of declaring any piece of media objectively bad, any trope objectively bad, or proving my opinion to be the correct one. This is meant to spark discussion and entertain, not personally attack you because I don't like something that you maybe do like. Also, I will be hamming up my displeasure for the sake of the video, but the title of the video is accurate. These are tropes that annoy me, not tropes I hate or tropes that make me hate the people that utilize them. I think that's enough preamble. Let's just get into that first trope, huh?
I look fabulous!
The first thing I want to complain about here is the frequency with which I see character designs that look really cool, or at the very least endeavor to look really cool, but are not the least bit practical. Trust me, I understand that sometimes a cute outfit or a cool vibe is just the priority. I mean, I'm making my elf bard run around a war zone in high heels, so I get it. Sometimes it's just fun to choose pretty over practical, and it can also be important to a character. A lot of designs I see get picked on for this impracticability problem are supposed to be impractical because the character prefers form over function for whatever reason. I think sometimes we can get a little blind to the fact that character design is ultimately about storytelling, and sometimes the story being told is that your elf bard is kind of a bibbo, and that's okay. Context does matter. With that in mind, dear God, there are so many characters who run around with costumes that would do nothing but cause problems, and do so for no other reason than the designers liked looking at it, I guess. It's even more irritating when the design in question is all aesthetics and communicates absolutely nothing about the role of the character I'm looking at, or is otherwise actively confusing, because, you know, that's pretty much the entire point of character design, is to teach me about the character. The most obvious examples of form over function are really just those over-sexualized designs in games, shows, movies, etc., where the horny intent renders fantasy armor, superhero costumes, army fatigues, or general adventurer gear completely useless. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the obvious gender bias and who gets this treatment the most, but don't think for a second that it's only the ladies. What do you mean I got stabbed in my fully exposed side in this combat encounter? I thought they'd aim for the only place on my body I decided to wear armor. These designs make up a very easy punching bag, but instead of beating that dead horse, I'm going to focus on two specific examples from anime. And those examples happen to be Mei Mei from Jujutsu Kaisen and Momo from My Hero Academia. I didn't realize their names would be so similar. Maybe it's a curse. There is some weird hair in Jujutsu Kaisen, but there is truly none more stupid than Mei Mei's, at least according to me. For those familiar with Mei Mei, trigger warning, I'm going to show her on the screen, and for those unfamiliar, I envy your blissful ignorance and will do my best to maintain it. Anyways, this is Mei Mei. I obviously do not have to explain the issue with the vibe she is going for here. Like, you see the problem, right? She can't. It's not like Mei Mei is alone in having a seemingly impractical design, especially when it comes to vision impairment. Gojo literally wears a blindfold for seemingly no reason. Please remind me if there's a reason. Jujutsu Kaisen is a show I enjoy a lot, but less like an actual show and more in the way that you would enjoy a kaleidoscope. I'm there for the pretty colors, not the once or twice per episode expository dump, so I kind of check out in those parts, and I am sure I have missed a detail here and there. Anyways, ignoring potential lore implications, Gojo comes out on top in terms of character design, despite the obvious attempt at doing something interesting with the braids. In Gojo's case, the blindfold would at least be super easy to remove if it's in the way, unlike a heavy braid hanging in the middle of your vision, as is evident by the actual show. When Gojo needs his peepers, he just, pulls off the blindfold. When Mei Mei needs to look in front of her, she just kind of has to tip her head around at awkward angles to try and see around it, or literally take her hand off of her two-handed weapon to physically lift the braid up and out of the way. I also must say that wandering around blindly is the exact level of cocky I would expect from Gojo. Meanwhile, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to learn about Mei Mei from this hairstyle, other than she spends a lot of time in the morning making her life more difficult for no reason, but that frankly seems completely opposite of her characterization in the show. To be fair, I will also acknowledge that Mei Mei's technique allows her to see through the eyes of crows, so if her vision is obscured, she could theoretically still see because of her technique. So, sure, it's impractical, but maybe not that impractical. Except the crows never last long in battle or are too far away to actually serve much of a function when in active combat, at least in the vision department. I also don't think it was ever stated that obscuring her vision helps her to focus on the crows or whatever, so I can't even give her that. But even if it was the case, couldn't she just, close her eyes? I don't know, that just seems like an easier solution. It's just that I'm not sure what the utility is here. And any that I can think of outside of pure aesthetics could be just as easily achieved through something that is less impractical than this. Momo has a similar issue, except this time with her outfit. For those unfamiliar with that character, her whole thing is that she has a superpower or quirk, or whatever they call it in My Hero Academia, where she can create objects out of her body, specifically out of the surface of her skin. Because of this, her superhero costume has a lot of exposed flesh. Given how her power works, this isn't inherently an issue. The issue comes in with the fact that this is what the outfit happens to look like. I probably don't have to tell you this is done to sexualize this character over anything else, and I hope I should not have to tell you that it's weird to do this to a kid. And before any weirdos out there try to comment about this, yes, I understand that Japan is a different culture with a lower age of consent, but this character is literally in high school. I don't care where you are in the world, it is never not creepy to fetishize high schoolers. Get your bitch ass out of here with that creepy ass rhetoric. Thank you. Anyways, my problem with this isn't actually that it is pervy. I would be willing to excuse it if the people behind the show were willing to sniff their own bullshit here. Giving her plated armor or tactical fatigues would hinder her, not help her. But there is nothing strategic about where this costume is open, other than for maximum boobie exposure. There is a very infamous moment where she tries to create a big safety blanket over herself and some of her friends while in combat, but she ends up destroying her costume completely because her back is one of the only parts of her body that is actually covered. You know, an area with way more flat surface area and therefore way more utility for her quirk, which she demonstrates in this exact moment by choosing to create this blanket from her back and not from between her mams, which of course went from being mostly hanging out to entirely hanging out in this scene. The characters in the show design their own costumes, or at least send in specific requests to designers, and Momo is supposed to be intelligent. I have a hard time believing that she would choose to have a giant split down the front of her, but not her back, at least not after she experienced it causing problems for her once in combat. She'd likely ask for alterations that are more practical because she is supposed to be a practical person. I also should bring up that there's literally technology that is established already in the canon to create a costume that works with your quirk. Mount Lady doesn't have to be naked every time she uses her quirk, because her bodysuit grows with her. So why not put some of that sauce in Momo's outfit too? Honestly, a bodysuit would most likely end up being less ugly. I know that's subjective, but I will not contain this anymore. If you are going to forego functionality so intensely, the least you can do is make it actually look good, which I personally do not get from either of these designs. It is no doubt the reason as to why I am so irritated by them in particular. This is just dumb, and this is just ugly. F. I grade you F. F for no form, no function. I think I've thoroughly gotten that rant out of my system, so let's move on to the next one. You know what really annoys me? You not being subscribed, or not having liked the video, or having commented. So annoying. That was really bad. In all seriousness, you engaging with my video in those ways helps out me and my channel a ton, and luckily they're all completely free for you to do. I'd appreciate it a lot if you threw me a bone there, especially if you've been enjoying this video so far and you think you'd like to see more from me in the future. Oh, also, a quick extra thing, if you are subscribed, make sure you have notifications enabled too. Apparently a lot of my subscribers have not been seeing my content appear in their feed at all for some strange reason lately, so it might be something to look out for if you don't want to miss out on stuff. I try to upload a big video like this every other Thursday at the least, and make community posts when I divert from that, so my post tab is also a good place to go if you want to stay up to date. Anyways, back to the topic at hand. This is an incredibly petty and specific design thing, and I don't have too much to actually say about it, but I need to complain about this because it drives me up the frickin' wall. So, we all know about those animal people who are just humans with animal ears and tails stuck on, maybe with a few other animal accoutrements if you're lucky. I would like to go on record right now to say I don't particularly like designs like this. I wouldn't say that it's a trope that annoys me, hence why it doesn't have its own section here, but rather that I'm just kind of bored of seeing it. I think there are just plenty of more interesting and frankly less lazy ways to make a cat girl or wolf boy, but I'm not gonna sit here and act like I don't find some such designs appealing. I've made plenty of designs like that through my life, and I also know the internet loves their cat people. Personally, I find the cat person archetype rather repulsive.
Timmy never wants to
But I digress. I'm not gonna call y'all out for it. What I will call out is how some people decide to handle the ear situation. You know what I mean by the ear situation. Because the character design in question consists of taking a human and gluing animal ears to it, unless you're gonna be gluing the animal ears over the human ears, you could end up with 2 sets of ears, which is very weird. The only problem here is that when we look at a person, we kind of expect for them to have ears, so just getting rid of them can also be very weird. Most designers handle this by giving them very big and bushy hair to cover up where the human ears would be. While, again, very repetitive and stale to me, it does usually make sense. And looks pretty good. It conjures the image of a fluffy cat or wolf or bear, whatever else it's supposed to be, and usually makes for an interesting silhouette. The same effect can be achieved by a hat, hood, or other headpiece. Basically, if you just make them Schrodinger's ears, you can leave your fans to ponder whether you glued your dog ears to a regular human head or a hard-boiled egg. There is a reason it's the most common solution, and I do prefer that method to the situations where they just kind of shear off the human ears, because it can definitely look a little uncanny. But I think a great example of it working fine is the short-haired version of Catra from She-Ra. I'll admit, when her hair was fully slicked back, it looked pretty weird. This is definitely that hard-boiled egg thing I was talking about, but both due to the fact that her ears are placed a little lower on her head than a lot of your cat girl sorts of designs, and because they cleverly use some cheek fluff to place a shape in that area where her ears would have been, I think that overall she doesn't look half bad in that last season. The only option that actively pees me is when the designer does nothing. They just leave the old ears right where they are and move on like it's not a problem. Let me tell you, it is a problem for me. I understand that it's not a great decision to have to choose between the same hairstyle trick as every other character like this on the planet or weird flat heads, but this looks way weirder, and it also calls into question why you even bothered with the animal components anyways if you weren't going to actually fully commit to them. I feel like maybe this is just an extension of my pet peeve that a lot of the times these sorts of animal human designs do not need to be animal-human designs, and the animal parts just don't really correlate or elevate anything. But anyway, I just can't help but look at these designs and wonder what the logic is supposed to be. I've brought up the concept of logic a few times in these videos, and it always grinds someone's gears because what's logical about a cat boy in the first place? So, to be clear, I am calling into question the internal logic of a story or a world. Obviously, space whales don't make sense in our reality, but if you have them in your story, there should be a logical explanation in context that allows them to exist without breaking your world building. The same goes for your aliens, or your angels, or demons, or robots, or shark princes, or any other thing you want to put in your universe. Sometimes your actual human logic is just, hey, this looks neat, and while that is fine for a VTuber, if I'm actually supposed to be immersed in your narrative, I'd personally like it to go a little deeper on that. I don't know, man. Character design is just one of my favorite things in art. It matters to me a lot, and I spend a lot of time really thinking about it when I put together my characters, so I guess it just irks me when it seems like other people aren't putting as much thought into it. I guess technically I cannot empirically prove that they aren't thinking about it as much as me. And I fully recognize I may be the only person that's bothered with this double ear thing. I am fine with my perception being a little goofy. It's okay for others to not agree with my petty grievance. But I have it. I have voiced it. And now I think it's time to move on again. I've already talked ad nauseum about quote-unquote ugly characters in my last video, specifically focusing on the frequency with which protagonists are usually given conventionally hot traits, while antagonists are not. Don't get me wrong, creating a stark visual dichotomy between hero and villain is genuinely great character design, and a villain character looking off-putting and grotesque to communicate that they are aversive to the audience also is good character design. Still, the problem is that it's a trope, and a common one at that. And I don't particularly love how things like disability, deformity, and general differences are so commonly associated with actual evil. If you want to hear my full thoughts, I invite you to go watch my other tropes video where I touch on those things, but here I just want to talk about something that's almost the opposite problem of all of that in a weird way. Have you ever been watching something, maybe an anime specifically, and you are just blown away by the animation and the storytelling and the characters and the voice actors? You're just having such a great time, but then you start to notice a weird trend. A trend where everyone keeps calling out one specific character for being really ugly. And no, I do not mean a character like Nendo from Psyche-K, where he's got some unfortunate things happening there, I'll readily admit it. No, I'm talking about where one character keeps getting pointed out as not super attractive, but from a lineup like this. Go ahead and guess who the ugly one is. Go on. Let's first get out of the way that obviously in the real world, people will pick on other people for being ugly regardless of what they actually look like. You could be the next top supermodel and some dipshit out there will probably have something to say about your face or your body or your arms. This is partially to do with how people suck and partially to do with how physical beauty standards are socially constructed and completely superficial. I mean, Hollywood used to and still occasionally does make crazy money off of makeover scenes that consist of straightening the hair and removing the glasses of a gorgeous person, as if non-straight hair and glasses just inherently make you a hideous beast. Similarly, I will also fully acknowledge that there are many cases in which a character might throw out the ugly insult regardless of whether they actually mean it, because it's an easy insult and they just want to put someone down or deflect from their actual feelings. What I'm complaining about here is less of how everyone is calling out a character for being ugly when I personally do not agree with the assessment, because that's totally subjective, and more of how a bunch of people are acting like a character is so very ugly when they all look the goddamn same. Nobara gets shade all the time for her appearance, Kyoka isn't worthy of getting peeped at, Midoriya and Okarun are apparently plain-looking nerds, L is meant to be gross and unkempt in comparison to the other characters, Grell is apparently just hideous. Also, while I did rattle off a bunch of examples from anime, it's obviously all over other kinds of media too, including Western media. Do I even need to actually say Meg? In all those cases, I'm using my peepers here. I'm really trying to see what they're saying, but when they are standing next to the characters that are supposed to be the hot hotties of the cast, I'm not really seeing much of a difference here. Maybe this person is a little taller, or a little more muscular, or has bigger boobs, but come on, these differences are not as drastic as the designers seem to want the audience to believe. This trope goes hand in hand with same face syndrome and same body syndrome, I'm afraid. I will call myself out for double dipping with this topic before you can, but really, if all your characters look nearly identical in face and body shape, I am obviously going to be really confused when everyone only picks on the one guy for being chubby. Not only is it really weird, but it's kind of a kettle and pot situation. Like, is this not a self-own? That guy could be you in a wig, maybe cool it with the attacks on his appearance. It's just yet another reason I can confidently say that having characters that actually look like different human beings and not identical clones with different hair dye is probably a good thing. The fact that characters in this category rarely look distinctly different, let alone specifically unattractive by most standards at all, speaks to a lack of internal logic again, and in most cases, I'm just getting the message that the designers don't want to commit to the risk of a slightly off-putting protagonist. They want to have their cake and eat it too. A character that the audience will like to look at, or at the very least not hate looking at any more than anyone else, all while also getting a punching bag. I have gone on record stating that I don't particularly like when a piece of media designs a character and calls them ugly, because it's pretty fucked up to point at a trait your audience could have and tell them that they're ugly for it. I will not be changing my mind on that. That being said, portraying conventionally unattractive traits and acknowledging that they're conventionally unattractive is not inherently evil, because nuance is a real thing. Depending on your spin, doing so could actually be empowering rather than degrading. Visibility is really important, actually. Little Billy would benefit greatly for seeing a character that looks like him still make friends, fall in love, pursue their dreams, overcome challenges. I don't know that anyone gets anything out of the entirety of Wall Market questioning whether or not Aerith is hot enough for the womanizing mega perv, but having no real reservations about Princess Cloud rocking up there. Alright, bad example, I got a lot out of Cloud in a dress, but come on, there is absolutely nothing homely about this picture, and you know it, developers. At the end of the day, it's immersion breaking for me. I also just think it's flawed character design, not only in the everyone looks the same so you're actively calling yourself Uggo department, but in the way that I genuinely don't know what the takeaway is 9 times out of 10. Is it a joke? Is this social commentary on how inane and restrictive our beauty standards are? Am I supposed to agree with the assessment, or is this something I'm supposed to judge the characters for saying? Like, it's fine to leave things up for interpretation, but personally, I'm of the opinion that a creator should have their own answer to a mystery even if they're going to leave it open-ended. Lack of intentionality and commitment to a bit will bleed through in your writing, people, and that's what that feels like. For the sake of offering a point of comparison in this department, I want to bring up a character from Ouran High School Host Club, that being Haruhi. It is a really funny concept that everyone walks around astounded by the fact that Haruhi has such soft, pretty features, and they're all so into this guy, but Haruhi's not a guy. She's a girl that just has short hair, and she's not even a particularly gorgeous girl by all accounts. That is, of course, the joke. It's the point, and it is identifiably the point. It is incredible satire of how superficial and easily manipulated our perceptions of what is attractive and what is not happens to be, and it fits perfectly with the overall themes of the show. Ouran High School Host Club is by no means a perfect anime, especially when we're discussing how we talk about gender in the show, but damn if it doesn't get some things right. Anyways, I think that this section is officially long enough, so let's go ahead and move on to the next trope I want to yap about.
Do you want to be my big sweaty guardian alpha boyfriend? What?
Okay, this is kind of a weird topic to approach, but I will do it anyways. If you didn't already know, I am primarily a comic artist. I have one active comic and one soon-to-be active comic currently in the works, though I think I'm admittedly stretching the meaning of soon-to-be at this point. But whatever, I spend a lot of time in the webcomic world, and while there are many comics out there that I adore, including of the spicy variety, there are also lots of comics that I kind of loathe. I know that it's been talked to death, but unfortunately most of the ones that I loathe happen to fall under romantasy. I could make an entire video talking about my problems with the state of romantasy in the webcomic world, and in fact might, if you'd want to see such a thing. Comment opportunity for you there, wink. Still, what I will say for now is that there are a lot of tropes involved with the most popular of that ilk that make me a little sad to share a platform with it. Tropes that are actually just improperly flagged content or blatant misogyny. Don't get me wrong, these quote-unquote romance stories, including those that delve into the dark romance space, are actually not these evil things across the board that the internet seems to believe. You can indulge in imagined scenarios that, while fun in a vacuum, would be terrifying, traumatic, or otherwise undesirable in the real world. That's kind of a lot of what fiction is there for. Being a spy or a fantasy knight or a dystopian commoner would actually be super not fun. But that doesn't mean it isn't cool to put yourself in those imaginative spaces. The issue is that we're sitting on top of blatant erotica that is just softcore enough to not get nuked off of the front page, but still deigning to call it romance. It's not romance. There is nothing romantic about my big sweaty alpha boyfriend kidnapping me from my home in the middle of the night to breathe. I wonder how much of that got censored. By refusing to properly tag it as mature content, it becomes very accessible for non-mature consumers who really should not be consuming it. The demographics provably skew rather young for platforms like Webtoon, and call me crazy, I don't think we should be exposing kids to breeding kids when their brains are still in a period of rapid development. Those highly impressionable demographics may not be quite as astute in isolating any harmful topics as purely fantasy fodder as a fully grown adult would be. Honestly, it's setting the wrong expectation for all viewers regardless of age. I have seen a lot of members of the Gooner Squad push back against previous criticisms of wanton horniness, but the thing is, I am openly horny on main. I want him carnally. And in all honesty, would. I'd be down to clown with plenty of the villains I just listed. I love boobs. All sizes of boobs. That one is free to kill me. I want to dive directly into his cleavage. I have never once portrayed myself as anything other than the chronically down bad chaos bi that I happen to be. The problem is not that hot designs are made at all. It is and always has been the context for me. If you're going to sell your erotica as romance, you are forcing me to handle and judge it using standards that you just do not meet. If you can't keep both hands above the desk when you design your anime character, it's going to be weird if it's in a show that I am expected to take seriously. It is not my bad for judging something on the merit it is trying to claim. On that note, one of the tropes that I think perfectly represents these sort of issues in these very tropey, samey, romantasy webcomics is how often you have this comically large man and comically small woman pairing. This is nothing that crazy on the surface. In fact, in some cases, I am totally down. I am a diehard fan of size difference romance. It's cute visually and in practice because of the dynamics that it can add. The problem comes in how this bigness and littleness is portrayed and handled within these narratives, which is that improperly flagged content and misogyny thing. I get it. A lot of ladies want to feel small and secure with a big, strong guy. It is a fantasy for a lot of people, but the special focus placed on the size difference veers very quickly into kink territory. Considering how often the size difference and all that such a thing could imply will be brought up in dialogue between characters, thought bubbles, or the actual framing of the panels, I think it's fair to say that the purposes for designing the characters this way is a little questionable. Combine that with the fact that these little bitty female protagonists are infantilized terribly, are dating the typical violent alpha male archetypes, and often present with significant age gap relationships, and you don't even need to ask the questions anymore. Ice cold take, but I find the soft, victimized, agency-less female protagonist that cannot function independently of her massive, broad-shouldered male counterpart to be extremely tired and uninteresting, and it has genuinely ruined my experience of several projects that I actually started out really liking. One such example that has already been discussed plenty of places on the internet is Lore Olympus. I really did think it was such a unique take on Greek mythology at first, and I love that. And the art style was so different from a lot of webtoon stuff at the time. But the longer it went on, the less and less that our lead character, Persephone, ended up being an active participant in her own story. Hades was always the one swooping in to protect her, and looking back, the amount of times that the characters call to attention Persephone's smallness and naivete when they literally refer to Hades as an old man, I think the author's personal interests started to overtake the story. Honestly, that's usually the worst part. I consistently see the size difference thing take over the story like that. I mean, I'd still raise an eyebrow even if it was less obtrusive, but it's never just a fun bit of visual contrast between the characters, or even a subtle cue as to who is the more protective in the relationship, or whatever. Instead, you get plot points that revolve around whether or not the female lead will be able to handle being impregnated by her big, strong, manly dragon lover, because she's just too tiny and he's just so big and powerful. I know that I keep picking on the Dragon King's Bride, but that comic makes it so very easy for me. As much as I'd love to give my fellow indie comic creators the grace of saying, this isn't something I'm personally into, but don't let me yuck your yum, and moving on, I can't. Because, again, no one seems to want to be honest about what is actually going on here. People make fun of fanfic, but you want to know something? Every possible content label can be and will be applied by the dedicated individuals behind these fanfics, so you know exactly what types of yucks or yums you can expect before you read a single line of the actual story. If this is neglected, the users of these sites will make a massive stink about it, and we should all be making a massive stink about these things. Gooner character designs and plot lines have their place in the world. I just don't like that mashing all of these things into comics for kids to read is the current trend. Also, where are my short king and tall queen pairings at? I don't understand. Like, it is so cute. It is just, Good grief, he's naked! Alright, I went to end with kind of a goofy trope, so I'm gonna talk about something that sometimes bothers me, but is usually just kind of funny. I love me a cartoon critter, whether that be an animal, some kind of mythological creature, or just a random funky little guy. Some of my favorite characters to ever exist are cartoon critters, but over time, I have noticed something a little silly when it comes to designs of these cartoon critters. The application of clothing is pretty much always a little weird. For the sake of discussion, let's look at the classic trio of Mickey, Donald, and Goofy. Not Sora, Donald, and Goofy, like I tried to say about 1,000 times. Jesus Christ. Anyways, these three Mouseketeers have something going on with their clothes that I find pretty odd. One of them has pants and shoes only, the next has no shoes or pants, but does have a shirt and a hat, and then the last one is fully clothed. Now, these are cartoon animals, and therefore I don't think we need to be taking too seriously what the various states of undress imply about the anatomy on display. Quite frankly, I think it is okay to be satisfied with the idea that there just is no anatomy on display, because Mickey and his friends do not exist in a context where their reproductive capabilities are of any consequence. Except for Goofy, but we all know that guy fucks. The natural next question of why does he need pants then if there's nothing to cover up is, in my opinion, a question that ignores, again, that this is a character design and not a real living thing. Sometimes real-world logic just does not matter nearly as much as an internal logic, or basic tenets of character design. That kind of is still the problem, though. Like, as funny as it is that Squidward doesn't bother wearing pants because his octopus genitals are on his face, it does certainly seem a bit silly that pretty much everyone in Bikini Bottom seems to wear bottoms, except for him. Well, and Plankton, I guess, but he's literally a single-celled organism, so what can you do? Like, do they look at him and question why he's not wearing pants, or does everybody just accept that that's just a Squidward thing and they just don't want to talk to him? Is that why nobody likes him? Oh my god. Also, before you come for me for calling Squidward an octopus, Steven Hillenburg, the guy who created the show and was also literally a marine biologist, said himself that Squidward is an octopus. Also, any time where Squidward takes on a less anthropomorphic form, for whatever reason, Boom, look, he is very visibly an octopus and not a squid. And no, you can't just tell me that Squidward can't be an octopus because he has 6 total tentacles, because that means he also couldn't be a squid, because squids have even more appendages. Is the name misleading? Yes, but do you honestly want to tell me Octoword sounds better? Anyways, moving on. Most of the time, this is just really goofy, and I've even seen this played for some great laughs before, like with Darwin from The Amazing World of Gumball. But I've also seen this uneven application of clothing have the very awkward side effect of making some characters feel oddly nude. Like, yeah, they are literally naked, but something is just extra awkward about their being nude because the people around them aren't fully nude. It's kind of like how when a person is naked but they're still wearing shoes, the rest of them seems more naked somehow. Or maybe that's just a me thing. Regardless, one example of a character that I cannot overlook the nudity of is, oddly enough, Mordecai from Regular Show. Not Rigby, and I don't know if the difference is just because Rigby is much closer to just being a raccoon than Mordecai is to just being a blue jay, but something about Mordecai's lack of clothing has always kind of put me off. I mean, the guy has actual pecs, and his nudity is only more pronounced when he stands next to his similarly modeled romantic interest, Margaret, who is fully clothed all the time and also has boobs. You know how I feel about bird boobs. Anyway, this is also something that I think Rigby benefits from, considering I did not know Eileen was an animal at all for most of the time that I was watching the show, because you cannot and will not convince me that this is supposed to be a mole, just in the same way that you cannot and will not convince me that Margaret is a robin and not a cardinal. If you didn't want to make Margaret a trans icon, you should have remembered what birds actually look like. As said, I don't have a lot to say on this one, I just wanted to end with something a little more fun. So, that's all I've got for this one. Just a heads up, I'm probably not going to make another video like this again. I know they perform really well, and they are genuinely the reason my channel has gotten the traction that it has, but I prefer to write more thoughtful and specific commentary and critique, which is not something I'm able to do as well when I'm rattling off a bunch of general ideas and concepts. Plus, I feel like I can't add on to the title anymore without it looking stupid, so this is probably a wrap on the Are Tropes That Annoy Me videos. That doesn't mean I am officially out of things to complain about. Don't worry, I have some long scripts in the barrel about some specific pieces of media that I kinda hate. Besides that, I will also be continuing to talk about myself and my personal projects that I embark on, and of course, I also started up a gaming channel. Link in the description for that. There. I'm mostly using it as a place to re-upload previously posted videos I put up here, but I plan to start playing some games that people have been bugging me to talk about for a while, so if you just can't get enough of me, there's plenty of me waiting around for you to enjoy. For now though, I'll quit my yapping and let you go. Thanks for watching to the end. Big thank you to my channel members for helping support me and my channel, especially as I'm still working through trying to figure out a good, consistent upload schedule. Everybody, please try to stay hydrated during this holiday season. Make sure that you're taking time for yourself and your friends and your family as you so choose, and most importantly, remember that you matter. Bye! Okay, genuine question. Mickey, Donald, Goofy, fuck, marry, kill. Because I think, well, okay, Goofy, marry Goofy in a heartbeat. I'm trying to imagine who would make the worst sounds during the act. And, like, I'm inclined to say Donald, but the thing is, do you really want to tell me that you want to hear, oh, as like, I need to stop. I'm gonna cut all of this.